After raking Florida with high tree-bending winds and flooding rains, Hurricane Earl has been downgraded to a tropical storm, but it continues a deluge across the southeastern United States. Good morning and welcome to the Weather Center. I'm Will Annan. We'll bring you up to date on the very latest on Earl's push in the southeast, but also Earl's rain-making twin, Tropical Storm Isis, is in Mexico but making a move on into the southwestern United States. For the very latest on both of these systems, let's go to Bruce Edwards. He's standing by in the Forecast Center. Bruce?
All righty, thank you, Will, and good morning, everyone. We've gotten the latest advisory now out from the National Hurricane Center, and Earl is no longer a hurricane. Earl has been downgraded to a tropical storm. We look at some of the first visible satellite pictures of Earl and crank it up and put it into motion, and you can see the system right here, centered right about there, is the approximate center of Earl, and it continues to work its way on through towards the northeast. Now, the latest advisory has Earl centered at 32.1 north, 83.3 west, or about 45 miles southeast of Macon, Georgia. It is moving northeast and has increased its forward speed. So once again, it's centered right about in through there. It is moving northeast now at about 20 miles per hour and is expected to continue to weaken, continue on that track well inland, and continue at that pace of movement through the next several hours. Now, the maximum winds have been downgraded to about 45 miles per hour, and it's expected to continue to weaken as it goes through the next several hours, working its way on towards the northeast. Central pressure is now at 989 millibars, so it's the pressures remain pretty much constant over the last 6 hours or so. Now, with a landfalling hurricane, there is that threat always of severe weather developing, and two severe tornado watches are presently in effect, one across North Florida and the other from the Georgia coast up through the coastal sections of the Carolinas. Now, the latter of the two, this rectangular box right here, is in effect until 5 o'clock Eastern Time. The other one is due to expire even as we speak now, with this system continuing to work through. Now, it all occurred about 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock this morning in that vicinity when Hurricane Earl came ashore near Panama City, Florida. The eastern panhandle is awash this morning with high water. Earl's flooding rain has forced some people out of their homes and making roads impassable. Earl's wind and rain has left many areas of the panhandle without some power. Down trees and power lines, and electrical problems also. And so the officials are out there now trying to make do with the situation. And one official has been kind enough to take time away from his busy morning is Charles Goodman, who had mentioned earlier that, yes, there were trees and down power lines. Some roads were impassable. They just advised residents to stay off the roads, let the crews out there to do their job with any interference, and then get things back up to snuff within the next 24 to 36 hours and get everything working according to plan by the time the big holiday weekend rolls around. So that's what their advice is to one and all. Now, even though Earl is no longer a hurricane but a tropical storm, still some brisk winds associated with it. During the last hour, you notice here 52-mile-an-hour wind gust reported at St. Simon's Island there in the Jekyll Island area, the Golden Isles of Georgia, and around Albany, Georgia, 41-mile-an-hour wind gust. Around Cross City, Florida, 43. So still some brisk winds here with this system, but it should continue to weaken. Now, the rain pelts down in central and southern Georgia. Remains under a flash flood watch, as does much of northern Florida at this time. You can see on the regional radar the bulk of the wet weather now moving South Carolina and central Georgia. The tail of this system still has a few thunderstorms around the Tampa Bay vicinity and around Pinellas County and down towards Sarasota and Bradenton as the system continues to work north. So still some squally weather here. Most of the storms heading northeast at about 45 to 50 miles per hour. Some heavier storms now approaching the west side of Jacksonville with this line right through here. So again, it's going to be squally throughout the course of the afternoon over the Florida Peninsula. Intermittent lulls in the action. But you get into central Georgia now and on into South Carolina, some substantial moisture. Again, the center of Earl should be in this position here southeast of Macon or so, and you can see the heavy surge of moisture coming up through Savannah and Hilton Head, the Savannah River Valley, crossing I-16 here, and again the Golden Isles of Georgia, Brunswick, St. Simon's Island down through here, catching some heavy squalls. We've had reports reports of funnel clouds around Charleston and around Hilton Head, or generally lifting on to the north. So again, the rainfall could be locally heavy. Now, as you get to the Atlanta, Georgia metro area, mainly central and southern parts of the metro catching the rainfall. So far, none in northwest Georgia. And with Earl heading off to the northeast, it appears that this will be almost the northern extent of the moisture, although some showers moving in towards Greenville, South Carolina. Locally, we could see 3 or more inches of rain in some areas, and localized flooding is indeed a threat. Now, the other corner of the country is also experiencing some tropical weather, and that's due to Tropical Storm Isis. A look at the enhanced satellite shows a weakening tropical storm over western Mexico, and as of the 5 o'clock Pacific time, Isis was located 80 miles north-northeast of Los Mochis, Mexico. Top winds at 55. The new update will be coming out momentarily with Isis. And I tell you, as it raked the Baja, it did cause problems all throughout that region of Mexico. Isis slammed into the Mexican mainland overnight with 75-mile-an-hour winds and some heavy rains. It's now headed north along the Gulf of California towards Arizona. Isis left floodwaters in Los Mochis, Mexico, forcing hundreds of people to evacuate their shelters. Earlier in the Baja, the storm killed at least 1 person and destroyed more than 20 homes. Some 2,500 people were forced to take residence in shelters as the storm raked the region. Now, here's a look at the water vapor imagery. Now, this here is Isis along the coast, and here, of course, is Tropical Storm Earl. And if you look at the water vapor imagery, you can see the roller coaster here in the dark, indicating some drier air. And if you watch this, you can see this trough of low pressure starting to dig down. What that's doing is kicking Earl off to the northeast, and it's increased its forward speed, so that represents some good news. The quicker it moves out, the better it is, and the less likely torrential rainfall will be the result. But again, we'll continue with an update at the bottom of the hour on the latest on what is now Tropical Storm Earl and Tropical Storm Isis. Remember, you can get your information when you want it on the internet at weather.com. And now Weather Will takes a look at the rest of the nation's weather. Will?
Thanks a lot, Bruce. We'll talk about some nice, pleasant weather across much of the Plain States at the present hour. A few developing showers earlier this morning are beginning to roll right through Chicagoland right now. There could be a few more developing this afternoon in New England after some very, very foggy weather earlier this morning. We're now looking at some dissipating fog, and things should be on the better side for this afternoon over much of the Northeast. But take a look at the Southeast once again with all the rainfall now invading just about all of South Carolina, southern parts of North Carolina, and just about all of central and southeastern Georgia. And of course, you saw the line of very, very heavy storms going through Tampa, St. Pete, and getting up towards Orlando as well. The west is mostly dry except for the southwest, where once again you could be looking at some very active weather this afternoon in parts of Arizona and southern California. Some of that is occurring right now. The moisture from Isis now beginning to lift its way northward and northwestward into the southwestern corner of the country. Let's put your Weather Channel maps into motion right now. We'll be looking at a tropical low. During this edition of Storm Watch, we're going to talk about the potential of more heavy rainfall in the southeast, especially in Georgia, South and North Carolina, and maybe some squally weather too in central and northeastern Florida. On the other side, we're going to talk about some heavy rainfall too, maybe developing over the southwestern corner of the country. And they're all going to be due to and caused by tropical weather systems. So let's check in with our tropical update right now. And once again, we're going to talk about the final advisory right now for Tropical Storm Earl. No longer a hurricane, expected to be downgraded probably to a tropical depression or a tropical low a little bit later on. But we'd like to caution you that even though it says final advisory here, we're going to be looking at Earl still hugging the coastline or getting very close to it right through later on this afternoon and also by tomorrow. And so if it would happen to move over open waters once again, we could be looking at some regeneration. That is not the official forecast right now from the Hurricane Center or their computer models, but something you always have to keep in the back of your mind with a system like this so close to those Gulf Stream waters. By the way, as of 11 o'clock this morning Eastern Daylight Time, the center of circulation for Earl, Tropical Storm Earl, 32.1 degrees north, 83.3 degrees west, or about 45 miles to the south-southeast of Macon, Georgia. Top sustained winds Well, we were looking at some of those gusting up to about 45 miles per hour. This thing is really picking up forward speed now, northeast at 20. The last advisory had it at 16 miles per hour. The one below that, or the one before that, was between 10 and 12. So it's picking up some forward movement. And again, you see the pressure holding steady now for about the last three reports at 989 millibars. Our visible satellite picture, let's see what's going on. We've got the center of circulation right in through here. And once again, the heaviest of the rainfall, barely brushing the south and east side of Atlanta, Georgia. We thought that this was going to be a drought buster for much of northern Georgia. That has not been the case. Now, if you live in northeastern Georgia, let's say from Athens down towards Augusta, getting over towards Macon, Georgia, you've seen some very beneficial rainfall here. And for just about all of South Carolina, you're going to be looking at some moderate to heavy rainfall through this evening, as long as we watch for the movement off towards the northeast of Tropical Storm Earl. We still have an effect for this afternoon. Tornado watches. They cover parts of South Carolina, southeastern Georgia, and also the southeastern corner of North Carolina. Have to keep again abreast of some changing weather conditions here, because every once in a while you'll see some of these squally weather begin to move on towards the north. And every once in a while, these lines of showers and storms can occasionally produce a tornado. We see that very often again whenever we do have a landfalling hurricane or tropical storm. And again, we're looking at the moisture beginning to roll on northward. Looks like a heavier cell right there, heavier thunderstorm around Myrtle Beach, and still looking at some very heavy rainfall from Macon to around Augusta. And looks like I-20 is going to be a real mess right now, getting over in through the central part of South Carolina. Let's talk about Hurricane Danielle very briefly. 11 o'clock advisory Eastern Daylight Time. Its center of circulation, 43.7 degrees north, 53.3 degrees west, 75 mile per hour winds, minimal hurricane, racing to the east-northeast to some 28 miles per hour. This is our latest visible shot. Still looks like it's holding together a rather healthy looking system right now. A rather healthy looking strong tropical storm or minimal hurricane, whatever you want to call it. Right now officially a hurricane, but holding its own, but moving into cooler waters. That's going to mean its demise within the next couple of days. A couple of tropical waves we'll have to be watching. One moving through the islands right now, another one a little bit farther westward across Hispaniola. And again, no organization as of yet, but still keeping our eyes on this, because once again, this is just about where Earl started way back when. Moved into the Bay of Campeche, the southern Gulf of Mexico, and now you know the rest of the story on Earl as it moved into the Gulf Coast overnight. So it looks like the Mid-Atlantic doing fine, but another powerful wave coming off the west coast of Africa at the present time. In the southwestern part of the country is Tropical Storm Isis. Again, moving northward at about 9 miles per hour, 50 mile per hour winds, throwing moisture again into the southwestern part of the country. The latest warnings now for tropical storm warnings across the Mexican coastline. And again, we're going to show you not only the satellite picture, but the moisture which continues to flow into Southern California as of the present time. Stay with us.
As Earl expands inland, more of the southeast feels its effects. When and where to expect rain, wind, and possibly flooding next on Weather Center after your local forecast.
When Hurricane Fran hit down here, it pretty much destroyed the Carolina coastline. We work in a marina. We were so busy helping our customers get their boats out of the water that we didn't have time to board up our house.
We've got a lot of windows in this house.
We went over to Lowe's and it was very late. Brian, the manager, let us in.